Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Oh, we were live and then we lost Felicia. Oh, she's back.
I'm back.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to two-player mode. So this is normally with myself. So I'm Simon Davis. I'm CEO at Goat Gaming and Mighty Bear Games. Felicia Coe is with us here. She's a partner at Play Ventures. And Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan. I invest here at BIKFRAFT.
Thank you. So yeah, typically we just do a quick rundown of all the latest news kind of in gaming, on Web3, and we share our takes. Some of them, they can be quite spicy. So Jonathan, if you feel like you can't comment on something, that's okay. Or if I've said something horrendous, you can just look embarrassed on my behalf. But we try and offer like a somewhat positive perspective also on the industry. So we have quite a stacked lineup of stories this week. So Felicia and I were talking about shoehorning one in last minute as well, actually. But why don't we start with legal news? Do you want to talk about that, Felicia? We were just talking about it before we started.
I mean, there's lots of legal news in today's run-up. So maybe we'll just start with some of the nothing burger lawsuits that have now been settled or are that started. The first one being Zynga being ordered to pay $45 million in damages to IBM for patent infringement involving Farmville and Harry Potter. Take-Two, which is obviously the owner of Zynga, now plans to appeal. Like, this is like a really strange one because this lawsuit was filed in 2014. So it's taken 10 years to settle and they just got 45 million for it. So I think taking into account legal fees, they really did not walk away with much. But in case you're interested in it, the two patents that they disputed were patent 849, patent that introduced novel methods for presenting applications and advertisements in an interactive service that would take advantage of the computing power of each person's personal computers and reduce demand on host servers. And another one, which is 719, which is designed to improve the performance of internet apps by reducing network communication delays. Basically, you can reduce the number of interactions between your client and your server. It sounds like, I guess in today's terms, it sounds pretty like par for the course that everybody uses. So I don't really know what the point was for this, but IBM has a history for kind of filing these lawsuits and defending these patents for better or for worse. What a giant great time for the lawyers.
Yeah. I don't really have a read on this. Like, I don't understand patent law, but it seems like the patents are pretty broad. Like every online game basically does these things. So
yeah, they've successfully IBM has successfully sued before Amazon, Twitter. So it's like you might as well sue the whole of the internet. I don't know.
if your cloud business isn't performing, there's always patents.
Okay, and another one is more recent, is not a 10-year-old case. It's Nintendo and Pokemon. So they're suing Palworld maker Pocketpair. They filed that patent infringement lawsuit against Pocketpair in Tokyo District Court just a few days ago, 18 September. It claims that Palworld infringes multiple patents and seeks injunction and compensation for damages. It's the Tokyo court. Oops. John's disappeared. The Far East picture has disappeared. But I'll continue on. This one's filed in the Tokyo District Court, which I'm actually not super familiar with. So I did some looking up with Perplexity. The average duration for an IP case to be handled from commencement to final decision in Tokyo District Court is about 15 months. And the first step is obviously determining if there was infringement. And then the second step is calculating damages. But I think under Japanese law, you do not kind of get any punitive damages. So anything that essentially Nintendo and Pokemon will get will be limited to any kind of lost profits that they claim they would have. Given how Palworld is designed and presented, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much damages to really get from this one. I feel like it's a social statement rather than anything else.
Nintendo does have a history of being quite litigious, but I'm curious on your take on this, John, because obviously as an investor and as a gamer, I'm sure you have your own kind of thoughts.
I mean, I thought, Nintendo has always been one of like, I mean, it's not one of the, it's like the most powerful gaming company in Japan, right? So like, be careful when you want to cross them. Like, I don't think Nintendo, like you're crossing like the biggest guys out there. And I think what's kind of sad about this is that you do. Hopefully, it doesn't discourage people from trying to innovate on existing IP. Just have to be very careful when anything is close to something that's as treasured as the Pokemon franchise. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, like as a game maker, it's pretty clear they draw on the source material quite closely.
Mm.
But I've seen worse. I've seen games which are closer. So maybe if they hadn't been as successful as they were, we wouldn't be hearing about this suit, right?
Yeah, but I think I'm curious exactly because the release just said it's a patent infringement lawsuit. Perhaps somebody who reads Japanese and is familiar with the legal docs that are available in the Tokyo District Court can let us know exactly like what are they alleging has been infringed. I think if it's some of the assets and characters, I think there's enough open source public data out there to show how similar those two are. I don't think you can, I'm not sure, but I don't think you can lay claim to anything that's game mechanics. So unless there's some underlying tech there that Palworld has or Pocketpair has somehow used that they shouldn't have. This one just seems like, yeah, I think making an example out of Palworld probably.
Alas.
It's there's a saying in Mandarin, 杀一儆百. So it means you kill one, you silence 1,000. So I think Nintendo, they just have to say something, right? Like if you consider if like Nintendo didn't do anything and then like it's just like open season, just come and infringe our copyright. So I guess that's probably one of like the strategic considerations.
Seems like we're going to have to put Goat World on hold for the time being. Yeah.
You going around killing goats in that one, or?
There's 1,000 goats, all inspired by different pocket monsters. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on a little bit. Shall we talk about the FTX thing we were just discussing? Interested in talking about that?
Sure. So some other stuff, in case you missed it, Caroline Ellison, she just got 2 years in prison for FTX. This is obviously like not even a slap on the wrist. It's really a stroke because her maximum prison sentence was 110 years. And obviously her cooperation has gotten her 2 years. So I assume it was good behavior, maybe even less, 1 year. But that's, I guess, one conclusion. The other one, obviously, last evening was pretty exciting. Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, was an appearance in front of all voting members of the SEC before Congress. I guess in the world's most uncomfortable confrontation between colleagues during the 4-hour session, his fellow SEC commissioners also were criticizing his crypto policies. One of them said, "We've taken a legally imprecise view to mask the regulatory lack of clarity." So basically, this is the most drawn out, I guess, slaughtering of a sacrificial lamb in politics as far as crypto goes in US elections. Curious, John, what's your take on this one? How closely are you guys looking at SEC, the US regulations, especially when it comes to your, I guess, sentiment on Web3, your investments, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, we both look at that, right? Like Phil and I. In terms of, maybe I'll just comment directly on Caroline's indictment. Like, I know she was very cooperative, but doesn't 2 years feel like a little short? I'm no lawyer.
She'll be out in one on good behavior.
Maybe. We're not, disclosure, we're not lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. Is this like not like the biggest like fraud case like in history, and it's like 2 years because like she snitched on SBF, like best snitch of all time. So I don't know, man.
Snitches get nothing.
Yeah. Oh man.
I don't know. I actually think that's interesting because it's such a light sentence compared to what SBF got, and obviously he's now, or at least a couple of weeks ago, he went on an appeal again, saying he never had a fair shot. So I don't know if this is just kind of like more ammo. Like, wait, look at her, she got 2 years. It's clearly not that big of a deal.
I don't know. This is why I'm not a lawyer. It's too difficult.
Simon looks like he wants to say something.
No, I was going to make a joke about the polycule, but I'm gonna refrain. But on the Gensler thing, I think that's good. I'm pretty bullish on that. So it seems that sentiment is very much against him. And so my hope is that regardless of who wins the election, that he won't be around later this year. He'll be replaced by someone who is perhaps less driven by some kind of personal vendetta and more interested in actually doing constructive dialogue and policy. But yeah.
Is there a poly market bets on when Gensler is going to get fired?
There must be, actually. That's a really good shout. I don't know, but there absolutely must be, yeah.
Well, if not, my theory is that Gensler will end up, after leaving SEC, he'll end up popping up at some crypto fund being their advisor.
No way. There's no way he's showing his face anywhere crypto related. I think he'll be out by Christmas. That would be my bet. There's election in November, incoming administration, like good time for him to step down. I think he goes and does some kind of NGO boondoggle, like an advisor to like non-government, like UN or something like that, or starting his own foundation, or advising, the Tony Blair Foundation or whatever, like something like that.
On blockchain.
Yeah, exactly, on digital assets. Bookmark this. We're going to check back in December and see if he's gone and then where he ends up next. But my bet is that he gets one of these fake jobs at an NGO advising for 7 figures a year.
Shall we talk a little bit about the return of Flappy Bird, Simon?
Yeah, let's talk about the return of Flappy Bird, the game that I guess anyone under the age of 25 won't remember, or barely remembers. Like I can't believe it's been a decade actually. Wow. I remember at one point people were selling phones that had Flappy Bird on it before he'd moved it from the App Store for like 4 figures. I remember iPhones selling for upwards of $1,000 on eBay because it still had Flappy Bird. So it was definitely a thing for a few weeks in 2014. Not sure that it's the thing that's going to help bring Telegram gaming to hundreds of millions of people. But hey, it's always good to see old games with a fresh lease of life. So yeah, he's returning after a decade. It's being released as a mini game on Telegram. I think Notcoin is publishing it, if I'm not mistaken. They acquired the IP rights, so it's no longer dependent on the original creator. I'm actually, in a way, kind of surprised the IP rights hadn't been sold sooner, because it would have been worth something a lot more years ago, and he just held on to it. So they see it as the perfect platform for Flappy Bird's return and Web3 expansion with 200 million gamers on Telegram. Players will be able to mint Flappy tokens without a wallet. So I'm guessing either using the embedded wallet or they'll be minting them off chain and then eventually moving them. I think the thesis from Notcoin, as far as we can see from their quotes, is basically bringing well-known IPs to the space to make Web3 accessible. And rereading my notes, the original creator was not involved and does not support the crypto integration. So I guess he did sell the rights. Flappy Bird Foundation Group also acquired the rights to some other games, Pio Pio versus Cactus, which I wasn't familiar with. Apparently that's the inspiration for Flappy Bird. Yeah, and the plan is to launch on mobile app stores and browsers by 2025, which seems actually a long time for something which is very straightforward. But yeah, I mean, look, Flappy Bird had over 50 million downloads by January 2014 and was the #1 game in many countries, and at its peak was generating about $50,000 a day in-app advertising before in-app advertising was really a real thing. So it was making, what's that, $1.5 million a month? It's pretty good. But John, you're an investor. If someone came to you with Flappy Bird on Web3, how many millions would you throw at it?
I don't think you want my answer to
that. I do now. I do.
Oh no, this is best taken offline. No, I think it's just okay. So what has been interesting to me about this Flappy Bird, like with or without the option to use Web3, is that if you dig into Reddit and other social media where people are talking about it, it's like the reaction to crypto is still very allergic. It's kind of sad to see. I think it's quite. I wouldn't. It's not surprising. But to see it still so strong, such a strong adverse reaction is, yeah, not good. I think if you browse some of the Reddit threads, so you just see a lot of people saying that, oh, this is like yet another NFT scam, and as Simon has mentioned correctly, like the rights don't belong to the original creator. So that makes it look even worse. So overall sentiment, I feel that's like maybe a topic we should talk about one day. Is that will we ever help people get over this, very negative first impression of crypto?
I actually have a slightly different take on that, but go on, Felicia.
No, I mean, like I honestly, I think my problem with it was like, oh, IPs like Flappy Bird will help make Web3 adoption more accessible. I mean, I think that is just like, I appreciate his point of view. I vehemently disagree. I think, probably the choice to use Flappy Bird was probably more a team-driven decision of nostalgia, and maybe they felt like that was a nostalgic IP, tallies with kind of the crowd that they were going for, and fits kind of the type of games that they want to make, kind of more casual or even hyper casual kind of games. But I think the obstacles to more widespread Web3 adoption and being embracing by other people is really not going to be so simply solved by let's just slap a nice IP on something. I think there's much more structural, endemic, cultural issues before Web3 gets really embraced or people even want to consider embracing it. And I mean, as lovely as Flappy Bird was, it's a great indie story. Dong, created this thing, he sold it, he made, hopefully a nice amount of money. I think at one time they were making 50K a day in that advertising, and hopefully, I don't even know what this guy's doing these days. I guess Dong, if you're out there, tweet at us or something. But like, it was a great indie story, but I don't really think as an IP resonates that much that people would be like, I gotta play this game. I gotta come into Web3 and oh wait, what's this confusing shit that's happening here? How, like, if they're not on Telegram, they're not likely already playing or embracing Web3. You're not gonna suddenly get some auntie from WhatsApp moving to Telegram and trying to play Flappy Birds there. That's just, it's a nice dream, I think.
Yeah, for me, this has a little bit of the same energy as when Budweiser and Pepsi had NFT collections in 2021, and they were tweeting at each other.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're bringing the brands into Web3. I'm like, that didn't really do anything. And this is, a 10-year-old game that, I mean, I don't want to be mean, but like people don't talk about Flappy Bird anymore. I haven't talked about Flappy Bird in a long time. So I think Felicia's right. It feels like a team-driven decision. Maybe it's opportunistic. Maybe they were offered the rights very cheaply, and now it's a great way for them to get a news story out. And Notcoin now, post mint has to find ways to keep people engaged, and on some level, it does kind of make sense. But yeah, it's. I think we need, as an industry, actually, to jump to your point, I think people warm up to crypto is very simple. It's like the minute that someone looks in their crypto wallet, which is embedded in WhatsApp or Messenger or whatever, and they've got $5 that was just airdropped to them or they made. That's their objections fall away. I'm old enough to remember I released a free-to-play game in 2014, and like people were like, oh, free-to-play is a scam. I'm not going to play this. I would play it if it was a premium product. And that was 4 or 5 years after free-to-play games had started to become socially acceptable. And it took really 10 years for us to move on from that, right? From like 2010 to 2020. I think Web3 won't be any different. And now we're in like year 4. We probably have another 5-6 years of this stuff. But eventually, as people start to feel the benefits directly, it will get better.
I mean, I think beyond that, I guess credit due. At least it's a very wholesome IP, which I think some parts of Web3 culture, we just came from Token, lots of side events. Some of them are great. John, you hosted a great one, I think, with Game Girl as well. Like great conversation, great crowd. Then you had others. I shall not name names, but I'm not talking about your event, Simon, but where I just feel like it's almost Web3 is almost like where gaming was, I guess, in the early 2000s, where you just have like this heavy, super bro, echo chamber, toxic masculinity shit going on. And that, I think, is what doesn't help. More people want to even think about, hey, let's explore Web3. What is this thing where, I've heard if you play Telegram games or if you play this game and then, you pay some money, but you also earn some stuff and you get airdrops and stuff. Like people don't even want to get there at that, they have this like mental obstacle because of perception wise. So I think as an industry, it's like we accept the behavior we think we deserve. So I would love to see the next token next year, maybe things evolve a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I guess my last point to the point you made is that I actually think Web3 in a way is worse than gaming was in the old days, because Web3 is also politicized and gaming was not. Gaming was just a bunch of stupid bros, but now there's like a political angle to it as well. Which makes it
it kind of was. It was like gaming is the, hide your kids. Gaming makes you makes your kids like learn bad habits and teaches violent behavior kind of shit. And now and again, like people still use gaming as a boogeyman, but I guess not to the same extent where you get lawsuits from the SEC and everything, and refusal to have regulatory clarity on things. But John, since you brought this topic up, I think what's your take on, I guess, broader Web3 adoption and what would really drive that forward?
Oh, this is a big question. There is a. I think I'll take a step back before I answer the question directly. There's a question. There's an author. She's an economist. Her name is Carlota Perez. She wrote the book Technological Innovations and Financial Cycles, and in that book, she delineates very clearly how all the major technological innovations have had ensuing financial booms and busts. And a lot of this results because people tend to have overinflated expectations of what technology can do. And then that results in a bubble. And then it pops. And then people, they learn because they lost money. And then they figure, and that's like one of the best teachers. You lose money and then now I know, like, this doesn't work. And then the pragmatists stay back. They continue to build and innovate. And then, like, you go through that trough of disillusionment, and people start building real stuff. And I think in that same vein, if you superimpose that curve with the financial cycle, with a technological chasm, then you see very clearly that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, the people who are in Web3 were what we call the visionaries, the innovators. The pragmatists haven't really come into this market. And over time, once the bubble has sort of quote unquote popped, if we count like the previous GameFi peak as the bubble, what we're left now is people who really are trying to do something and unlock new use cases with Web3, like Simon. And a lot of these other founders that we're starting to see come from very prestigious Web2 backgrounds, try to use Web3 to solve a problem that they have faced as game developers for a long time. And I think we're in that tricky spot where you need a lot of fellow pragmatists, fellow early majority people who are labeled as pragmatists need to see more pragmatists come in. And it's like just like a catch-22, and that takes some time. So I feel like this is like a completely predictable market cycle. It's not circular, it's cyclical, and it just needs a bit of time, as we've seen with free to play and now it's Web3. Once we see more quality founders and products come to market, and I think that will help a lot of like the early majority people come in.
Actually, I just want to add on to what you just said, because I think you're exactly right. I think Telegram, obviously this is going to sound like I'm shilling, but I think Telegram could actually be a way to involve people to Web3 through the back door without them even realizing it, and at scale. And we're seeing every day, I'm getting emails from other like really, really legit Web2 founders, and they're saying, "Hey Simon, I want to build in Telegram. Like, will you have a chat with me and talk to me about this?" And so just the amount of quality people that are going to be building in that space, it makes me very, very positive.
Yeah, it's like I feel like a lot of people don't think I think I'm a big nerd, and so I feel like if I want to be good at my job as an investor, I have to be a technological historian. Like a lot of these cycles keep repeating. They always in some different form, but what doesn't change is like the human psyche, like what happens, how people think about things. And Bill Gates, was it Bill Gates who said like people? He said this in relation to AI. He said that people always overestimate what technology does in 2 years and underestimates what it does in 10 years. And then we see this happen over and over again. So part of it for me is like copium, because I'm sitting here like hoping Web3 becomes mainstream and thinking like, fuck, like, am I wrong? And I take comfort from like all these like historical patterns that, you know, it will play out well. I think if it's been like going on for like 100 years, like, you know, like the railway mania, internet.com bubble, you know, and the Web3. So yeah, that gives me a lot of conviction that, you know, I can have the patience to invest today and we will reap the rewards like 5, 7, 8, 10 years from now.
So basically being pragmatically optimistic.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we've beaten this one. Let's move on. Let's talk about another, well, going from one thing which is very much alive and starting to take off to something which is now dead. Let's talk about Unity's runtime fee. So Unity is cancelled. It's there is a controversial runtime fee. You know, when that was announced, even Mighty Bear started looking at other options because it really was very damaging for trust, and it was I guess every other game developer in the world started exploring alternatives at that moment in time. So they're not going to go with the runtime fee, but they are going to increase the price of subscriptions, with Pro rising by 8% per year to Enterprise increasing by 25% a year, which is not cheap. Unity licenses are expensive, but it's much cheaper than paying a runtime fee for sure. Unity Personal will remain free, and they've actually doubled the revenue ceiling. So long as you're making under 200K a year, you won't have to pay for Pro. The new CEO announced the decision after consulting with the community. I'm sure they made their feelings quite clear. As they've gone back to a seat-based subscription model. You know, the usual stuff about price hikes, covering investment, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to be very frank, the core product actually has not really improved markedly in like the last 8 years. They've added a lot of extra services that devs don't use, like Unity ads and investments in AI features that people don't use and other stuff, but whatever. I think people are happy just basically that they're not adding the runtime fee. Yeah, and obviously the 2023 announcement led to the departure of John Riticello and developer boycott. And it was linked to their battle with AppLovin, which led, you know, many people to leave both Unity and IronSource, which it acquired as it was trying to take on AppLovin. But I guess at the end of the day, AppLovin has ended up being the clear winner. It's a fantastic business, great ad revenue, reach, incredible network. And, you know, if I was writing a very brutally honest assessment, maybe it's just a case of also saying that you should focus on your core competencies and what you do really well and really double down on that, because Unity is not an ad network. I think that's become pretty clear. I guess they were trying to get ad network valuations and treatment, but you know, it's backfired in spectacular fashion. But yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, I guess just as a recap for those folks who are not so familiar with Unity and the runtime fee, that was announced suddenly, September 2023. Basically, they suddenly dropped a bomb that they would start charging an additional runtime fee, 20 cents per install once your game reached a certain threshold in terms of installs, annual revenues, and obviously in an environment that was already challenged in user acquisition and unit economics, like adding on 20 cents suddenly per install that you lose to runtime fees that was difficult to get a grasp on was not received very, very well. And again, why I guess that was so taken so badly by developers. Like Unity still is, I think, by far a dominant engine in terms of market share. I think 40 to 60% of games are developed using Unity. I think if you look at mobile, probably even higher. The top 1,000 games, I think about 70% of them actually use Unity. So obviously, this is a sudden unit cost to you that you never factored in, and understandably why developers were upset about it. I think, I think acquiring ironSource was a strategic decision for them. They needed some way to show the markets that they had revenues, ad networks made sense. But I think maybe, and I'm just speculating because I think it was like the worst kept secret that perhaps there was a lot of internal politics between the Unity folks and then the ironSource folks. I think that's, I guess, an interesting case study of like M&A transitions. I guess what happens when you bring two kind of very different corporate cultures and ways of operating together, and what happens afterwards. I think if you just look at it on paper, maybe it kind of made sense, especially at that time when they were trying to counter app loving and become kind of more, high performing on the revenue side for themselves. Because yes, I mean, increasing prices, nobody likes that from a developer standpoint, but from business point of view, like they didn't really have a whole bunch of options. How much more can you keep raising prices per seat every year? That kind of caps your growth from a business perspective for sure.
I don't have too much to add. Like we had some people who had worked at Unity for a very long time, like 7-8 years, and then we just like asked them like for their opinion, like sort of like what's happening behind the scenes, and without disclosing who these people are. What happened was, as a listed company, they were really struggling to show growth and margins. It's largely like a loss-making business. If you look at like the investor reports, they largely still trade on revenue sales multiples, not earnings. And they were basically abandoned. Okay, they had neglected the core engine, and they were favoring trying like money grabs on data installs and ads and whatnot, which just makes sense as a company. Like that's what they need to do for the share price. And when all the other verticals had not made enough money, what happened was John at that point was I guess kind of out of touch, offered this like controversial proposal, and now like that trust is broken. Yeah, I think that's like a fact, like based on what we've heard from people who have looked at Unity. Now, what's interesting is that if you dig far enough, I think back in 2010 or 2011, it was also John who suggested that if you were playing a multiplayer first-person shooter, you could pay like a fee, like an in-app transaction to reload or like something. Like I don't know how true that is. It sounds a bit too good to be true. But the passion for monetization is there.
Hey, I'm a man who once sold a gold spaceship for €1,000, so I'm not going to throw shade at him. I love the creativity in charging to reload. I think maybe just firing gold bullets would have been less obvious, but still, I like it. All right, shall we move along?
Yeah, let's get back to more exciting, I guess, animal news. It's all animal themed.
You want to run this one?
Sure. So I've noticed something. You've got Catizen, you've got Hamster Kombat, you've got Goat. Is it like everybody chooses an auspicious animal? But anyway, so first up is Catizen. They revealed an airdrop pass. Their token has launched. They launched on 20th September. They distributed 15% of the total token supply, listed on Binance, OKX, Bybit, Gate.io, and BitGet. It initially launched at 0.73. It peaked, I believe, at 1.07. Now it's around 0.78 with an FDV of 784. very solid performance, considering I think there was some upset players and upset community because of the expected token supply that was supposed to be airdropped based on the white paper versus what was actually going to be distributed through quarterly airdrops, which was, I think, 34% was the expectation, and instead it got 19% reserved for quarterly airdrops lasting 19 seasons, which is over 4 years, 8 months. They were dissatisfied, obviously, and they felt that, again, like the Unity runtime fee, some things run in different categories, but same thing, different day. I guess they didn't communicate that too well, or perhaps they probably changed their mind about the allocations. But still, very solid performance, 30 million revenue in 6 months, 7 million DAUs, 3 million on-chain users, 600K on Mantle. And then I guess their ARPPU is $27 with 1 million paying users. So that's pretty incredible. Congratulations to the Catizen team. I think amazing outcome. Amazing outcome.
How do you do that?
You have to be using a Mac.
Okay.
I enabled it on my Mac settings. So I have different gestures I can do to make different things happen. So I think this one is confetti. There you go. Yeah, so I used that at the right time. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, look, I'm going to say something controversial, but it could be that however much free money you give away, however many tokens you give, like you always have some people who are upset. I think in general, like the Catizen team has done a fantastic job. And I think everyone associated with the project in whatever capacity should be very proud of themselves because it's been a huge hit. And yeah, I'm sure if you ask people 6 months ago what the biggest stories in crypto were going to be, I'm pretty sure like Hamster Kombat and Catizen, which was live then, would not have been on their bingo card. So absolutely crushed it. And he's very bullish actually. Like I'm guessing all these people, all these airdrops are driving millions of new people to onboard onto exchanges to collect their tokens. That's the part I actually like the most. They didn't set up a claim page, people to claim to their wallets. They just did it via an exchange. So the team doesn't worry about smart contract vulnerabilities or anything like that. And they've onboarded millions of people onto exchanges as well, which is, I think, okay, some people in crypto will have a disagree with me, but I think it's a net positive people to at least start the journey in crypto is something which is kind of safe and set, and they're not going to misplace a seed phrase tomorrow. So yeah, I think it's a good start. What do you think, John?
I had a question for you, Simon. If we use this analogy where Catizen is a theme park ride in a very large theme park, and then there are other rides, so Hamster Kombat and Goat is one of them. Is that the right analogy where it's the same set of users potentially moving from one theme park ride to another? And obviously they can go back to the theme park rides over and over again. Or is Catizen one theme park and then we're spawning a lot more theme parks with like different people going to different theme parks?
That is a good question. I'm going to give you the consultant's answer and say it depends. I think that basically, I think there are some users which definitely are in this Venn diagram that overlap and are basically just professional grinders. But I would also say that each one of those 3 products you listed is so different that they attract different people. And so we have some people in Go that are just really hardcore into Waifu Clash and just love the waifu games and the card game. Look, there are people that love idle games and tapping games, and there are people that love merge games, and the cat theme also helps. I'm sure there are people who play Catizen that have not played Hamster Kombat or Notcoin simply because of the theme. And so my guess would be that it's probably, I want to say like, I'd say there's probably like a 20-30% overlap. And then other than that, the users actually tend to be quite unique. Though I would guess that the average grinder or average player is maybe doing only 2 or 3 projects at a time, just because they're so time intensive. Like I don't have enough hours in the day to do all my daily quests in Go. And so I think you'd need to have a lot of time to do like 2 or 3 of these games.
But I think also to that point, like I think right now, if you think about obviously these, let's just say you 3, Catizen, Hamster Kombat, Goat, it is different enough, and I think that is because also it's still early days, and so if you're first or second mover advantage right now, it's a wide open ocean to position yourselves differently. I think each of them have taken up a different approach. I think the later you join in, the harder it is going to be to build a compelling theme park that is different enough from each of this and differentiated enough to capture most of the user's attention and time. So, I think it'll be interesting. I'm so excited about Telegram. Definitely. I think a shout out to, I think it was Tada during the Token 2049 week. Really smart. They launched a mini app on Telegram for booking rides. The last time I checked on Wednesday during the token week, they had about 2.8 million maybe users on the Tada mini app. Fantastic for somebody that, I think has been in operation at least for quite a few years. I think they, whoever thought up this initiative deserves a great raise. And it's good to see more kind of these apps and utility coming to the Telegram platform and really kind of adding to, I guess, how embedded they'll be into users' lives. And the more it becomes part of the daily habit, your go-to app, I think the more vibrant of an ecosystem it'll be.
Yeah, talking about Tada, right? You have them and a few others that are desperately, not Tada actually, you have a few others in Southeast Asia desperately trying to build a super app. And they're building all these features that we all refuse to use, like payments and other stuff. And the minute Tada actually builds something which is useful and convenient, like 2.8 million people instantly on board. So maybe that's the lesson there. Like instead of trying to force us to use, your QR code payment system or something else that no one really wants, like give us things that actually solve real problems and are convenient. So I hope to see more apps building on the Telegram ecosystem for sure.
Yeah, a good thing just to give context for the Tada, like 2 point something million. It doesn't sound like a lot, I guess, if you're coming from like, I don't know, the US or something. But for context, I think the population of Singapore is like what, 6.5?
6-ish, 7, yeah.
So like that's a third of the entire island in less than a week.
By the way, Tada is like they have like a Web3 company, Like I think they
Yeah, I
started
know
off
they started out. They started as that.
MVL token or something.
Yeah, they
So it makes
started as
sense
that, and
that
then
they
at
caught on like
some
the mini app
point,
wave.
yeah, and then at some point it became just kind of more Web2 right and then now, well, they're back. So there is value to just staying alive.
So watch out for goat themed tuk-tuks this time next week, the next pivot. I think that was the last. We were going to talk. We also actually were going to talk about Hamster Kombat. That's a good point because that's the last one. So another airdrop. So Hamster Kombat launching Thursday. So that would be tomorrow. If you're watching live. And yeah, players can claim 88.75% of their tokens on day one, the remaining being vested for 10 months. It's unusual. Normally it's the other way around, right? Where you invest a smaller amount, the bulk is vested over time. Vesting was not communicated, leading to a bit of FUD, which I guess is kind of predictable. But of the 300 million players, 43% are eligible for the airdrop, 2.3 million banned for cheating, including someone from our own team who used their own bot for tapping. Not naming anyone, but you know who you are, Terry. And then 6 billion hamster tokens will be distributed in this airdrop, with 15 billion reserved for season 2. And there's a simplified interlude season in place until the next full season. So yeah, lots of airdrops coming. I guess the biggest takeaway from both, right, is about being transparent about the airdrop mechanisms ahead of time. I also understand as a project that you don't want, there's a temptation to hold on to that information, do it later, because once you make the communication, you're committed, right? And maybe you want to give yourself maximum optionality. So it's like, which is the lesser of two evils? But yeah, I mean, as investors, what are your thoughts?
John, I'll let you go first.
I don't have any more on Telegram apps, honestly.
Okay. Well, I'm starting to think that, look, if you think about it, 88.75 can be claimed on the first day. and the remaining is 11.20.25 vested for 10 months. Maybe it's my anchoring bias here, because obviously when we work in investments, like that's 10 months is like a pretty short vesting period, and that's a relatively small percentage of tokens. Like you can claim the rest up front. I'm starting to think that no matter how you do it and no matter what you structure it as, people will always be upset simply because they build up this idea and this fantasy of what it's going to be like, and no matter what the reality of how it's going to vest or whatever, it's never going to live up to imagination. Imagination is always better than reality, basically. So you could have put it at like 50 90% up front, 10% later. It wouldn't, honestly. I think you'd still always have people who are upset. So that's my unpopular opinion. Players out there will be cursing me for saying that I don't really think it actually matters that much, as long as you're not like I think as long as you're not announcing it right at the very, 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 very end. That is a bit scummy. Maybe they could be better communicated, but I also understand, like, when you're doing these things, so many things running, maybe they did want to communicate it more upfront, but I also think no matter what you do, people are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, I think I just want to have one last thing. I'm curious to get both your reads on it. Like, my instinct tells me that this like tap to earn meta is basically running its course now, with like 2 or 3 big ones, and we're going to see diminishing returns for. I'm seeing more and more clones as well. Like, I saw one recently that was. I won't give too many details because it'll be too specific, but it was basically a clone of a very successful Web2 game, just in a tapping format. And so I'm just seeing more and more like tapping reskins. I think those games are going to really struggle, and you have to find a new angle. So, our angle is a different one. It's about gaming with prizes, but I think people have to get a bit more creative as well, and not just promise people that if they, do this for the next 6 weeks or whatever, they're going to get some free money. Like, I guess that's my only kind of concern, is that if, people get tired of Telegram gaming per se because it becomes associated with that. But what are your reads, guys?
Completely aligned. I don't think this tap to earn thing has much more steam, even when it first came out. And I mean, Simon, you also came from like a very long and tenured background in Web2 gaming. It's kind of reminds you of like what happens with hyper casual. If there's like no depth to it, no fidelity. Yes, onboarding is easy, but gaming is LTV CAC. Like if CAC is low, but LTV is low, then doesn't mean anything. These hyper casual guys just die off, and then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think even you see that with hybrid casual games, you can get peak revenue pretty early. It starts to decline quite quickly because, I guess for whatever reason, people just don't stick as long. But obviously it's all about LTV CAC. They still have things in their favor over there. But I think the tap to earn thing was dead with the second game already. So if you're thinking to get into Telegram gaming, please don't do a tap to earn. Like, move on. That's dead.
I've seen at least half a dozen of them in the last week, so we're going to be seeing many more of these. But yeah, hopefully, other people also bring in kind of fresh takes on the space. Actually, I saw one game today that genuinely like shocked me by how good it was. I mean, obviously, like, I'm very proud of our own stuff, but I was like, wow, this is a mashup of 2 of my favorite Web2 games, and it's running flawlessly in Telegram. So that's bullish. I guess the question is the audience in Telegram going to play these games, or are they leaning more, like you said, John, more hyper casual? Because I guess that's the other question we need to answer. Like, is hybrid casual mid-core going to really work on Telegram? But I guess only time will tell.
We accept the games we think we deserve.
All right. And on that bombshell, shall we get out of here? Is there anything else we want to add?
That's all. I'll see you guys for drinks.
Oh, we'll see you guys. Jonathan is an
emotional.
amazing karaoke singer. So I discovered that about him.
Don't dox me. That's a lie.
Yeah, it's true. Is that I don't know. Yeah, you're very good. I was going to make some comparisons to other singers, but I wanted to make sure I don't get the wrong one, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Phil is an amazing rapper.
She is the singer Pri and Eminem. This is true.
I've never actually heard anyone like nail like the rhythm of like the entire Eminem rap. So that was like,
I aim to please. All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. If you guys want to follow him, he's Far East Witcher on Twitter. Is that the best place to reach you? If you have folks who want to pitch you a tap to earn game.
Sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. See ya.